But what I'm going to be talking about today is kind of overwhelm, starting a business, and essentially 3 things that I've started using that have helped massively. Whether or not you're running a full-time business or you're kind of dabbling in business. Cool, Claire, I'll see you in a second. Yeah, so depending on what kind of business you are running, it really, these kind of 3 things that I've learned will really, really help you. I also think it's helpful to just hear how people started their businesses, because especially women, it can be really scary when you decide to start a business. It can be really intense. And I don't think many people talk about the struggle quite openly. It has been about 5 years now that I've been running a yoga studio, about 2 years now that I've been sort of running a yoga studio and a retreat business, and very recently, since COVID, quite an online presence. So yeah, I'm going to talk about kind of how I started my business, the mistakes that I made, and then these 3 tech tips. Now, I talk a little bit about this in my blog, but I'm going to speak about it in more detail as we go. So when you start a new business, it can take up every spare minute. It feels like almost every single day there is a new tech thing that you've got to wrap your head around. But I think what's important to know is that it doesn't have to. When you start a business, it could possibly take up all of your time. And I think there is like a little bit of it, when you start a business, you want to like dig your teeth in and like kind of work really, really hard, because that's exciting. And I know it was for me, especially in the first year. I was learning loads of things and I was trying out loads of different things, and it was exciting. I wasn't quite at burnout yet, but I was definitely making my way there. So yeah, there's been three tools recently that I've used that have made a massive difference. And they've really streamlined. I think that's important, is like they've streamlined what I need to do, and made it easier for me to kind of get things done, which sometimes feels impossible. So I think it's important to talk a little bit about the struggles that I've had. I don't have it 100% figured out yet. I think that's important. I'm constantly learning, and especially with doing this online stuff, my brain at times felt like it was going to explode. I kind of had running a bricks and mortar studio down, but then that all got thrown out the window and completely threw everything on its head. So I've learned a lot over the last 5 years, and I think that's important. Like, learning is super, super important when you start a business, or even when you start a new job. Learning those things really, really helps. When I started running a yoga business, I didn't have a bloody clue. I was a secondary school teacher. I'd been a secondary school teacher in Hackney for almost 10 years. I'd kind of made it up the ranks of teaching quite quickly, but I'd never done anything on my own. I'd never run a business on my own or anything like that. I had no idea how to be a businesswoman, let alone believe in myself as one. And I definitely didn't have confidence. I had comparison stuff going off like bombs in my head. And I think like cutting down on social media, especially if you're feeling that way, is super important. You don't need to follow everyone. You can mute people for a while. If they're triggering something in you, just like cool your jets on it. I was absolutely exhausted. I was becoming quite antisocial. I wasn't hanging out with people that often anymore. I was staying in all the time. I have to work. I'm so busy. Ugh, it was so boring. I was super grumpy. And I was pretty close to having a breakdown and burning out. I went to go speak to a few therapists. None of them really gelled. I'm not saying that, I'm not ever going to have therapy, because I would love to. But yeah, none of them 100% clicked with me. And I was having migraines almost weekly. They got super, super bad. So much so that they were starting to make me feel sick, starting to make me physically sick. And I just knew something had to stop. When I first opened Hot Pod, I was glued to my laptop. I was glued to my phone, just constantly plugged in. The last thing I would check before I went to bed was my emails, my data, the sales that had been done. And the first thing I did was the same thing. Okay. Email became like instant messenger for me, and I was just on it all the time. I was replying to customers at 12 o'clock at 12 a.m. in the morning. It's just ridiculous. And I was constantly putting out fires, and reacting rather than strategizing, rather than being proactive. And in your first year or so of business, that's what you're doing. You're learning the ropes. But after you've been going for a while, you really need to sit back and you need to look at the bigger picture. And if you're exhausted here, how are you going to be able to, plan and think bigger picture over there? So over the years, I started to find my feet. I'm, approaching my 5th year, and there's a lot of finding my feet now, especially with COVID and everything that's changed. I didn't find them gracefully. I've, found them by making mistakes, by having to apologize to people, by, losing money, these kinds of things. But it's okay. Just tell yourself it's okay and you'll learn. I think what the biggest thing that I struggled with is that I really felt like I'd lost my identity, and I'd lost who I was. I was like constantly just living in yoga clothes. I wasn't washing my hair or doing my hair. And I try to do this more. Like for me now, wash my hair, brush my hair, make sure that I brush my teeth. I was always brushing my teeth. I'm not that grim, but just have that self-care happening. And something I knew at this point when I was just like, I didn't even want to leave the house because I looked so gross all the time, that something needed to change. So I started speaking to some coaches. I worked first on like my mental well-being with coaches. So I worked with someone called Nicola Jane Hobbs. Then I worked with Pandora. And once I kind of found my feet with how I was feeling, and I felt more connected to myself again, then I could start strategizing on the business. But until I was okay mentally and emotionally, I wasn't going to be able to take care of myself. When it got really bad, I was binge eating and purging again. This was stuff that I did when I was like in high school, and I'd really worked on it, and I never thought it would rear its head again. But when things got super stressful and I wasn't taking care of myself, I started really falling into bad habits again, and I wasn't listening to my body. So I spent 6 months kind of really working on rebuilding myself. And I remember like taking calls and going down to Walpole tidal pool and like sitting by the water and, chatting to these different coaches and really working on myself. And what's weird now is looking back at how horrible I was to myself. And, if you run a business or if you work like crazy, like you don't have to run a business, but if you're if you're working, and it could even just be like being a mom, like sit back, look at how you've treated yourself over the years, and you'll probably realize that you've not been that nice. So I was yo-yo dieting. I was grabbing like my fat and parts of my body and like almost till like I bruised them because I was so kind of frazzled with myself. I was demeaning myself when I looked in the mirror. And I was working out in a way that caused pain. And all of this while I was a yoga teacher. That's the wild thing, okay? So yoga teachers talk so much about, well-being and self-care and breathing and all of this stuff. And I wasn't doing any of it. And that's the ironic part. But I reckon if you talk to many yoga teachers or people in health and wellness, when they start running their own business, just shit goes down. Like you just lose all of that self-care. So now you know the struggle. After the storm, what happened? So self-care became like the most important thing. And it sounds mad now when I'm like, oh yeah, self-care, of course. But like taking a bath, having a nap, reading a book, like all of these things I never used to do. I now have non-negotiables. I walk Huddy, try to walk him as much as I can. Some days I'm teaching really early. I have time in the morning for myself. So this morning I woke up, I did 4-7 breathing. I then did a little like 6-minute meditation, and then I read some of Raven Smith's book. It's like a book that is nothing to do with business, nothing to do with work, nothing to do with yoga. And it just lets me read and lets my brain shut off. And because I'm doing all of these things now, I can then take my brain and put it in that compartment where I'm like, okay, now I'm going to work on my business, and now I'm going to work on my confidence, and now I'm going to be a businesswoman. Without any of that work, I never would have been able to do it. That's just the truth. Without, I would probably still just be like that. I wouldn't even be that duck underwater. I'd be like above water, like help, screaming, if I didn't start doing those things. So when I left teaching and moved into running my own business, time management was the most crucial thing. Give me a wave or heart or something if time management is a struggle for you. I went from industry where I was micromanaged like crazy to having all the time in the world and not really knowing what to do with it. I felt quite crippled by this time. Like I just literally didn't know what to do. I had loads of things to do, but there was no structure, and I needed to get that structure and that control. And this is where I started using tech to make progress in what I was doing. And the tech tools that I use, especially Asana, that's like the biggest one, gives me a huge sense of achievement. And I really, I tick that board every day and it makes me feel better. So I'm going to talk to you first about Asana. If any of you have no idea about these programs, Google them, like we can have a call, we can chat about them. They're really, really good. So Asana is the first one. Think Trello, if you've heard of Trello boards, but like more powerful. So it has all these different boards that you can like, so I've got one that's yoga retreats, and I like write down a list of like all the different things that I need to do for a yoga retreat. So I need to get the waivers, I need to book the accommodation, I need to budget, I need to do all of these things. And then I make this board with all these tasks, and then if I'm gonna do another retreat, all I do is copy and paste or duplicate task, and that is my next retreat. So let's say you're writing blogs. You would have all the tasks that you need to do for your blog, and you would do it for, let's say, the blog on 3 tech tools, this what I'm talking about today. And then I would duplicate it for my next blog. And then I know I've got that checklist. Okay, I've got to make the pin, I've got to do spell check, I've got to do my SEO. And you can tick that off. And all of these things, you put dates on them, and then they just transfer into this like bigger calendar. And then it just plots it into those days. So it takes some time to like strategize and kind of figure out and make all those templates. But once you've got them, you can just repeat them over and over. And I love like daily tasks. So certain tasks like finances, I do now finances weekly. And I've got a checklist for what I need to do. And then that just duplicates every Friday. So then once I tick it complete, it duplicates again on Friday. It's super good. I would recommend someone called Louise Henry. She took me through it. She's incredible. She's got like online courses, and they can really make it easier. I know if I was to do it on my own, I never would have used it, and I never would have used it to the potential. My favorite feature about it is that sometimes when you tick things off as complete, a little rainbow and like a unicorn flashes across the screen. It's completely ridiculous, but I absolutely love it. And yeah, my top tip is to spend the money if you're gonna use something like Asana. If you feel like you've got heaps and heaps of stuff to do, and sometimes you sit down at your laptop or you sit down to do work and you have no idea where to start, Asana is amazing for that. So Louise Henry has a course for that, which is really good. So my second one is called Preview. I used to use something called Later. I think there's something called Hootsuite that are basically online programmers or schedulers for Instagram. So I use Preview. I like Preview because it has filters. You can save different groups of hashtags. So I made a new hashtag yesterday for meditation. So I've got like 20 hashtags in there. And then I write my post, and then I just click on that saved. So it'll say meditation, and then it populates my 20 hashtags in there. So that's really, really good. It allows me to have cohesion, and it allows me to sit down on one day and plan. So I do a plan for a week. Some people will plan a whole month, but I find it's a bit overwhelming to plan for a whole month. So I sit down and plan for the whole week, and then I know that those will just go. They have to, at this point in time on Preview, you can work on your laptop or you can work on your phone. To work on your laptop, you have to pay, but it's quite cheap and it's worth the money for me. But you have to click a button to send it to Instagram. Hopefully one day they'll have that so it's just completely automated, so I don't have to be on my phone at all. But I just know at 8 a.m. every day, I have to go on my phone, click a button, and it sends it to Instagram. So my favorite feature of this is the hashtagging. Okay, so I've got hashtags for yoga, for blogging, for wellness, for retreats, just whatever your topic is, you would just make different categories. And then my tip is Jasmine Star. She is absolutely incredible. I know when I first started listening to her, I was like, oh no, I don't know if Jasmine Star is the one for me. But she is so clever, so badass boss. Like, she's just amazing. She's also just adopted a child, which I also love. I think that's amazing. So yeah, follow her. She's got a paid for program. I haven't joined that. I may at some point, but at this point in time, it's not something that I'm looking into, but her podcast is super good. So my last one is Canva. So Canva is a online design company that lets you do all types of different graphics. Canva Basic is free. I have upgraded to Canva Pro, and there's a few reasons for that. Two of the things that Canva Pro allows you to do save me heaps of time, and it's worth that money to me. So number one for Canva Pro is your brand kit. So if you have colors and a logo, it's just saved at the top. So if you want to change the colors on something, if you click colors, all of your brand colors are just there at the top, and then you can click them really easily. And then you've got that there. The second reason I love Canva Pro is because of the Resize Tool. So let's say I was making a YouTube graphic, so a YouTube thumbnail graphic, and I knew that I wanted to then use that in my blog, and I wanted to then use that on Instagram, and then use that on Facebook, and maybe even on stories. When you click Resize, it formats that into the proper sort of diameters of what you need. You're going to have to sort of adjust and shift things, but that saves me so much time. It's incredible. So yeah, top favorite feature is that brand kit and the resize. And my top tip is, if you have no idea where you're starting with Instagram, and not with Instagram, but with your own brand, colors, etc., go on Google and you're going to type in color palette generator. And then Canva will bring you up this amazing kind of generating document, and you just click different colors and it starts to bring up ones that would work really well with it. And it's really fun. I had no idea what my colors were going to be, and I found it through that document. There's so many, so you probably spend a few days on it, take a step away. What I did actually is I saved probably 5 to 10 of my favorite color palettes, and then I just sent them to loads of people that I trusted. I sent them to some of my coaches, sent them to my family, I sent them to friends, and I just said, let me know what color palette you think represents me the most. And it was interesting because there were 3 that came up the most often, and they were quite similar. So that really helped. So I'm almost done blabbing on here, guys. But my final tip for all of you, if you run your own business, if you're, you work, if you're a mum, is stay in your own lane, okay? Harriet says it to me all the time, every time I start to get a little bit comparison-y. She's like, just stay in your own lane, focus on yourself. I would be completely crippled by Instagram, by Facebook, by, lots of other things that were happening if yes, it's so good, isn't it? And it's really hard, especially when you first start, because you're just like, oh, everybody's so much better than me. They're doing this, they're doing that. Just do you, babes, and you'll be fine. So yeah, I think, if you don't want to delete an account, you don't have to, but muting certain accounts. So I know I've not obviously been that quiet about our fertility struggles, nothing to do with business, but people who are, doing those gender reveals and doing those baby announcements, they're just getting a quiet mute. And it's not because I don't love them, and it's not because I think they're dickheads. It's just because right now, to protect myself and how I'm feeling, I just do a little quiet mute. And then when, I'm feeling better, or maybe when finally we have a child, I'll unmute them and it'll be okay. And, that doesn't mean that you don't love that person. And I would also say, on the other hand, follow accounts. If you're on social media, follow accounts that make you feel good, okay? Not accounts that make you, feel comparison or feel bad. Have mentors, have those people that you look up to. So yes, I think that's it. Canva Pro, Preview, and Asana are my number 1, 2, and 3 tools that I use that have saved me time. If you have any questions about any of them at all, please feel free to ask. But yeah, enjoy running a business, enjoy what you do. Don't feel like it has to be the most stressful thing in the world. Have your baths, have your chocolate, read, journal, meditate, whatever those things are for you. Read The Miracle Morning. And I hope that was helpful. I'm going to stop blabbering on now. Thanks, Claire. And yeah, I'll be back next week to talk to you about something else. All right, bye. Love you guys lots. See if I can end both of these right. I'm ending Facebook. Instagram's going to be a bit slower, so you're just going to have to stay with me for a second. End.